So welcome back, everybody. This is Paul again, another of my series about esoteric psychology, esoteric philosophy, and so on. A little bit about my background. I grew up in India, and I was born there, and had a lot of experience with a variety of Hindu types of experiences and cultures, and I also traveled across the Middle East at one time in my life long ago. And I got inspired by my travels and family background to investigate all kinds of spiritual activities and experiences that people had in life, and I started to meditate when I was about 20 years old. But I continued to do a lot of research, reading books and so on, and learning about the different traditions around the world having to do with what's called exalted beings or avatars, or basically, an extension of our own awareness, which basically there's a conscious evolution going on as well as a physical evolution. And as humanity and all beings just kind of slowly accelerate and expand and grow, then we encounter opportunities to get a lift and transcend and go into a different kind of experience in life. And over the thousands of years of human history, there's been a lot of different stories about so-called supernatural beings. And basically all of them say, look, there's some aspect of this human body that we have that has an awful lot of capabilities that we're not really told about, generally speaking, in most cultures. And in fact, that range of ability that human beings have, there's really not much of a limit in many ways, because there's the interior awareness of our own being is what all the great teachers have tried to help us with, to help go from the outside and let go and be inside for a while and begin to sort of float on the infinity of our own beingness, that our own awareness, our own existence is a part of a vast oneness, and our awareness deep down on some deep level throughout the cells, throughout the spaces in our cells, all the way down to the subatomic level, there's a beingness that we can identify with, and that beingness, that ultimate beingness that I call the non-dual, non-local awareness, the continuum of consciousness, the thing about which nobody can say anything, but we try, is an underlying deep awareness that is actually a part of us. And in fact, there is no duality there's a perception of duality, there's a dance that goes on, there's a beauty in that sense of a dance that goes on in creation that allows millions and trillions and zillions of beings to have some role in it and to experience a greater and greater unfoldment of their own awareness. And as I said in the previous video, there's sort of a cosmic brotherhood, that the concept is, look, if you learn and you grow and you feel joy and you feel bliss and you have something to share, then it's your duty and your responsibility to go out and teach whatever. And there's a whole continuum of helpful beings, you might say, that participate in the creation. And we don't have answers or why or how and all these things, because it's really, we're only here for a short time, and it's really hard to figure out all the celestial mechanics and the time and how many types of angels there are and how many fit on the pen and all that stuff. It's sort of, we have to get a sense of our own beingness to see where we feel our own place in this whole system of beingness on this planet, you see. And there's a lot of beings on this planet right now, people listening to this video and going about their daily lives that in previous lives have already made tremendous progress, and they're really like gods and goddesses, you might say, just really here to participate again. And sometimes the ancient teachers say, well, we're really just trying to wake up from something. There's not something that we need to achieve, because in our womb, when we were in a deep womb, go into a state. That's why people love the womb experience, because in that there was a place in there that really was a type of samadhi. It's a type of rest where the being in there is completely, in a state of union and enjoying the bliss, in a sort of like calmness there. in spite of all the stuff that's going around. Now and then they kick and stuff, but generally speaking, there's an inner experience that the person has in the womb that is deep and profound. And when we come out and we start looking around at everything out here outside, we start getting distracted and we forget that, look, there's a deep place within ourselves that is connected to the mortal, and that little spark of us is just, we need a little mirror, we need a little nudge, a little hint, you might say, to recover that knowledge of our own being and to feel our own self in that deep place that people call samadhi, where there's no conflict there, there's no competition there, there's no judgment there, there's just a place where your own being is there, and that's it, and that being, downloads all kinds of interesting information and observations and understandings as you just sit there doing absolutely nothing. So I wanted to give a little bit of an exercise here to start with, because I wanted to talk about a whole lot of really interesting stuff having to do with consciousness, and the various things that people experience, and there's a lot of confusion about words and so on, and the terminology gets all mixed up. But basically, there's a lot of internal experiences that people have that are elevating and help align us with our deeper self. And, I try to give a little bit of hint and exercise. So I want to try one right now. Not right now, but sometime go stand in front of a mirror and just stand there and just totally relax there and just look at the person there. Everything, there's no judgment there, there's no way to criticize you, there's no way to punish you, you're just there. And just look in the mirror and let yourself relax, and while you're relaxing, start feeling the other parts of your being. The emotional part, the memories, the different things, whatever comes to mind, just feel that your beingness is much more than just that body. Because we know that. We go about our lives sometimes, and in our mental state we might have a fixed idea of who we are, maybe the right sunglasses, the right hat, or the right clothes, or the right walk, or whatever. But when you're standing in front of the mirror, just let all that go. Just be there and look. And realize that oxygen has to exist for you to be there. Everything has to exist for us to be there. So you can just breathe slowly and look, and just at some point, if you just accept and look at your own being, at some point there's a place where the mirror and you start to merge, and you realize there's nothing here to judge, there's a simplicity of beingness, and when we get in touch with that part of us, that's our natural state. That is the part where we put everything down for a while, and we're not trying to achieve. We don't need to build an empire. We don't need to do what exactly our husband or wife or parents or whatever wants us to do right that moment. You just sit there and observe your own being, because all the incredible things that many different sages and all different incredible human activities have been on this earth for thousands of years, amazing intelligence and beingness, that all is just you sitting there right there. You might just have to be woken up one day and say, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? But nobody tells us we're beautiful, or nobody tells us these days how great. The sages get honored over the centuries because they didn't just say nice words. They didn't just say, oh, love your neighbor or whatever. There's a lot more to it. It's like, how do you love? How do you experience a bliss and joy? How do you get healed with your own being so that then you can go out and serve and enjoy the process of conveying all more joy to other beings? See, it's really quite simple, but religion makes it very, very complicated. So I wanted to just start this whole conversation a little bit with a little bit of an exercise that I just shared with you. And there's many other kinds of exercises that many different teachers have taught. But I can tell you one thing, something deep and profound and mysterious about the breath. All the great teachers, and there's always, that keeps coming back again and again and again. So I'll go a little bit through these different definitions and so on, and have a little discussion about it. Basically, there's a lot of different types of words that are used to discuss superpowers or advanced states of consciousness, but essentially all those terminologies get so mixed up and so confused and so completely distorted that people start to get concepts about what they should be or what level this is and so on, and I just say, well, look, people who have an ambition say, I want to be clairvoyant, or do you really want to hear other people thinking? I don't think so. Do you really want to see all the stuff that is so horrible? You see, so there's a certain misconception about what our eyes are able to see. People say, I want to have super sight, I want to have clairvoyance, but you don't realize that our physical eyes, just the way they are, without the so-called clairvoyance, are incredible. So we have to understand that the whole beingness that we have, all of us sitting here, have our body. That particular type of body has been taught from ages. You can use it, it can function a certain way, and you can have a tremendous realizations and experiences of expanding your own awareness. And that's why all these people who teach these things get honored so much. That's why they get praised so much, because it wasn't just some nice thing they said. Practical techniques to help us realize our own sacred space, our own gift to the cosmos, and our own little drop in the ocean of oneness. So I'll go through some of these words here a little bit here. Basically, if you can conceive of just one infinite, unspeakable oneness, and it slowly percolates into creation in just an infinite variety of ways, and for the consciousness to make it all the way down to the physical level, which are bodies and so on, there has to be a whole lot of different systems to enable that stuff to happen. For example, clairaudience and clairaudience and all these kinds of experiences that people have. There's a physical part of the body, there's a technique, there's chemistry, there's a science, one of the ancient sciences of how to awaken and how to get this alignment. Because it's often mentioned, for example, people talk about the aura. All you have to do, you don't have to see people's other auras. In fact, you probably don't even want to, really, because they're probably uglier than you want to look at. So just the thing is that we have our own little flame. Just like if you take a candle and you put some shelter around it, and nothing will disturb that flame, it'll just come to rest in a certain shape. And that shape often is called, in esoteric terminology, the personal divine flame, the candle. That process of alignment that we get in our own body, which is basically coming to rest and doing nothing, the mechanics of our own system, given if we're in decent health, will start to settle into a beautiful, beautiful harmonic presence. And the more we align with that, with good health and good movement and good exercise and activity that spreads and expands, that part of any person grows and expands, and there are beings and there are people who have such a presence, a physical presence of darshan. A darshan is when someone who has had a tremendous alignment with such incredible presence that by being in that presence, it enables anyone in their presence to automatically start aligning. You see, this is the benefit of this, like a magnet, because when someone has built this antakarana, this bridge from the deepest parts of their consciousness all the way down to the physical part, then a really, really powerful presence happens. Now, it's just like a magnet. See, a real teacher, a guru, they make one magnet, make a piece of iron into another magnet. You see, they duplicate their own experience, or even greater, by giving and fanning the flame of this candle and bringing it to some tremendous resonance. You see? Now, all of it, again, I started with the breath. All the different teachers, basically the God breathes, okay? In a way, the definition of different esoteric teachings about the cosmology is that the universe is breathing. It makes a sound from zero frequency all the way up, and slowly but surely that sound, it's just, we can't comprehend it, but you can feel something. That's the whole thing about a lot of these experiences, because we have to go beyond what we think, what we imagine. People fantasize about, well, when I have a deep meditation, I'm going to be hallucinating, and I'm going to be back in Atlantis, and I'm going to be flying around in this car, and I'm going to be like looking at my past lives. And you see, at some point where the greater awareness that a person has, or a being has, the less they're going to think about going back to Atlantis. You see, there's a whole. For example, if you take a look at the sun, for example, conceive for a minute an analogy of the sun and the deep pulsing motion of the sun. There's an 11-year cycle, and there's a motion, there's just like it's profound motion of this incredible, unspeakable, unimaginable power that goes on for billions and billions and billions of years. Something has made it completely stable, relatively speaking, for that long period of time, and it has to do with cyclic resonance, stabilizing into a place where there's a radiation. So when we meditate, and there's many different exercises that can open up that little door inside of us understanding. The understanding we need to have is we're not the body, and there's a oneness, and the more oneness we have, the less we're interested in going back to Atlantis and finding out what our dog's name was. So as far as spiritual enlightenment, there's a lot of scenery along the way, and graduating and experiencing all different things, but ultimately the greatest peace is in a profound silence within, where, again, the utter peace of non-duality and non-judgment and non-competition and non-aloneness, solitude, you might say, where there's just a lovely feeling. And that's how our connection is. And this is why throughout the centuries and thousands of years, many of the great teachers said, look, if you can't do anything else, if all these other exercises are so difficult, just let go. Just unclutch. Just let that candle flame settle. Just let it be. There's no one to judge us. We're just here. Whatever characteristics of our personality that we have that we may not like, all those can be changed. Those can be modified. All the great qualities that we have when we know about ourselves, we can accentuate those. We can sharpen our knife, so to speak, and become more conscious and more experienced and more kind. And that's what a lot of these people did, because if you want to have a growth of consciousness, you don't want it to be a magic trick and a parlor trick where you can go and play cards and always win. I mean, what for? Even if you could do it, let's say, and I know that I've heard that there was a Swami Vivekananda can memorize an entire book in a week. I mean, this guy has incredible, he was one of these, Mahatmas. But anyway, these are people like that, got there because of concentration and by just letting themselves be, unclutching. You see, we don't have to become anything. In one sense, we have to sit still long enough to be just lifted up. And we get lifted up in a way by having a higher frequency of energy, because the whole concept, the beautiful thing about the analogy of the whole, man's and God's image and so on, has to do with, look, this body that we have has been demonstrated and proven for thousands and thousands of years that is capable of a lot of features and a lot of experiences that are not normally, but they're actually very natural experiences. And, if people learn techniques and listen and practice on their own and just let go and let themselves become their own divine flame and realize that wherever they've been in the past, they can always go someplace quickly new by just letting go, by ascending, by just floating like a balloon. You see, so I encourage people to listen to some of my other videos and read some of the books I recommended and listen to all different kinds of content. There's so many people out there trying to convey exactly the same thing in various ways to simplify our concepts about what we want ourselves to be, and just let ourselves be and realize that what we really are is more than that body we might see in the mirror, more than a profession and the mental idea we have about ourselves. There's a whole depth, a mysterious depth of our dreams, our psyche, our memories, our creativity, our imagination, and by opening ourselves up to the subtleties within our own being, we start to cross that bridge from being unconscious of certain things to being vastly more conscious, so that we can live all aligned. So if we live completely aligned, this is what the great teachers were trying to say. Look, it's not about going out in the cave and living in the mountains somewhere. Whatever you got to do, at least stay aligned and stay in this beautiful place and function and do whatever, business, whatever, but stay with that tune. And when we get disturbed by going out and doing different activities and everything disturbs us, we just practice and go home or wherever and do nothing. Go to a place where there's no defense. So, see if I forgot anything here. The emphasis on sound. I'm going to go and make another video more detailed about some of these issues here. There's a lot of different parts of our body, we call the etheric, physical, the emotional, and astral, the mental body, the light body, the cosmic matrix of livingness, the fluid web of the cosmos, perception without reaction. That's a big one. I'll talk about that. I've talked about that in some of my other videos. If we want to perceive what's real, just like looking in that mirror at our own self, just perceive without reaction. Because if you perceive another human being without reaction, you will say, you'll recognize something awesome that's a reflection of your own existence. Because if you see the beauty in another human being, or even a dog, if you have to go to a dog, that's fine, a being, where you realize that there's a magic, there's an incredible drama happening here, where the oneness gets rediscovered in the love that we have and the relationships we have, until it becomes more of a steady stream in our life. Because